Deep beneath the sands of Giza lies a mystery that's captivating the world. Could there really be a vast subterranean complex underpinning the Pyramid of Menkaure, just like the one recently found under the Khafre Pyramid? Recent radar scans by Filippo Biondi and his team suggest yes. In this update, the archive will explain the most recent findings, explore the implications of these findings in relation to the legendary Hall of Records as referenced by Edgar Cayce, and provide additional reference sources for further research. Earlier this year, the Italian-Scottish team led by Corrado Malanga, Filippo Biondi, and Armando May detected what they described as massive vertical shafts, spiral staircases, and water-like conduits stretching up to 610 meters below the Khafre Pyramid. They even suggested the existence of cube-shaped chambers at the base of these shafts, possibly parts of an apparent underground city. In early June, the team announced that their radar system has detected matching geometric formations under the Menkaure Pyramid, with the same pillar-like voids and spiral galleries that share over 90% structural similarity. Filippo Biondi's team used synthetic aperture radar tomography from satellites, which is claimed to have the ability to detect subterranean structures down to nearly 2,000 feet. Under the Menkaure Pyramid are vertical cylindrical voids echoing those beneath the Khafre Pyramid, surrounding spiral ramp systems similar to staircases, channels or conduits intersecting them, and potential cube-shaped cavities at the lowest levels. Their interpretation is that the pyramids are only the tip of the iceberg, hinting at a single, monumental underground infrastructure linking all three Giza pyramids. As we explained in our original news release back in March, the claims have stirred fierce backlash from experts, namely Zahi Hawass, who flatly calls the findings bullshit, citing the limits of GPR and SAR penetration. Considering this is the guy who once stated that he does not believe in radar, we really do not pay that much attention to his opinion. Beyond shafts and tunnels, the team hypothesizes that there is a mechanical or energy-driven function aligning with ideas like those by Nikola Tesla or Christopher Dunn's Giza power plant theory. Additionally, the team believes there is evidence of flood erosion and salt deposits that hint at catastrophic water events circa 12,800 BC, which are tied to the comet impact hypotheses. Biondi's group is preparing to release full tomography data in the coming months and is seeking Egyptian permits for coring tests beneath Menkaure. They intend to continue the project with high-resolution volumetric SAR tomography packages, precise mappings of shaft positions across both pyramids, and plans for intrusive ground tests to validate voids. It is prudent to remember, however, that until the data is peer-reviewed or physical entry is allowed, the theory remains unverified. Since the initial release of the project's findings back in March of 2025, the discovery has revived legends such as the secret Hall of Records at Giza and connect to the legendary landmass of Atlantis. Edgar Cayce, often called the Sleeping Prophet, was an American mystic who gave thousands of psychic readings while in a self-induced trance. Among his most compelling and enduring prophecies are his references to the Hall of Records, a mysterious repository of ancient knowledge. According to Cayce, the Hall of Records was created by survivors of Atlantis, an advanced civilization that Cayce claimed was destroyed around 10,500 BC. These survivors foresaw the need to preserve the spiritual, technological, and historical knowledge of their civilization for future generations. The hall was intended as a library of human history from the earliest beginnings of the soul's journey in the earth plane through Atlantis and into subsequent civilizations. It contains records of Atlantis, including its development, destruction, and information about the soul's evolution and the spiritual laws governing human experience. Cayce frequently mentioned that 3 repositories were established, each by a different group of Atlantean refugees. The most famous location, often referred to simply as the Hall of Records, is said to lie beneath the Sphinx, or between the Sphinx and the Nile. Cayce stated that this site holds Atlantean records and was connected with the construction of the pyramids and the preservation of sacred knowledge. Cayce predicted that these records would be uncovered when humanity was spiritually and scientifically ready, specifically during a spiritual awakening in the late 20th century to the early 21st century. Cayce described the contents as including historical records from Atlantis, the spiritual laws of the universe and human development, along with technical and scientific knowledge beyond what was known in Cayce's time. According to Cayce, the hall also contains information about the pyramids, the Sphinx, and their connection to celestial alignments. Finally, he believed that prophecies concerning the future of mankind, including a potential pole shift and the return of a Christ-like consciousness, would also be discovered. Cayce's readings about the Hall of Records have inspired decades of speculation, research, and expeditions by archaeologists and mystics. However, mainstream Egyptology does not support Cayce's claims, which is no surprise because Egyptology rejects out of hand any theory that does not fall in its predetermined timeline of ancient Egyptian history. Edgar Cayce's references to the Hall of Records form part of a broader mystical narrative about lost civilizations, spiritual awakening, and the cyclical nature of human history. Whether metaphorical or literal, the Hall of Records is portrayed as a sacred vault of humanity's deepest truths, waiting to be uncovered when we are spiritually prepared to receive them. For our regular viewers, the connections between these new findings, Cayce's readings, and the emerald tablets of Thoth the Atlantean are both obvious and profound. After all, the tablets explain that Thoth was indeed from Atlantis and left after its cataclysmic destruction to rebuild civilization in ancient Egypt. And the similarity between the Hall of Records and the Halls of Amenti is unmistakable. Even though the Halls of Amenti are described in terms of a metaphysical construct, both represent a repository of immense knowledge about our race and planet. The channel recently published a video about the revelations in the Emerald Tablets, and while some debate the authenticity of Doriel's early 20th century translation, the message within these tablets resonates across time, speaking directly to the soul of seekers around the world. Whether myth, metaphor, or mystery, the wisdom of Thoth continues to inspire, awaken, and transform. Several years ago, the archive published a video about Cayce's Atlantis readings. The video is no longer publicly available now, but with these most recent findings, we believe it is vital to put it back in the public sphere. Please keep in mind that this was in the early years of the archive and the production quality was not at the best level. However, the information is more relevant than ever before and needs to be shared. We also encourage the viewer to investigate the reference links provided in the description of this video, which provide extensive resources concerning this material. Edgar Cayce maintained that Atlantis was the first civilization which was technologically superior to even our own, and that its last surviving islands have disappeared somewhere in the Atlantic Ocean some 10,000 years ago. He claimed that the Atlanteans were well versed in technology that harnessed the power of the quantum world. This included the use of crystals and sound waves for healing, elevators and connecting tunnels that operated by compressed air, and quartz crystal science that was used to mine gold, copper, and silver from the earth. Atlanteans were adept at the use of silicon chips at levels unrivaled in the modern world. The crystal skull, for example, was cut with such infinite precision that no known modern tool could have replicated the job. They were familiar with the amplification power of crystals and laser technology and memory chips. They made extensive use of mass mental telepathy, psychokinesis, and astral projection into fourth-dimensional consciousness. As the Atlanteans began to increase their knowledge and understanding of all these destructive forces, the natural balance of nature precipitated the first destruction of Atlantis. The effects and the extent of the first Atlantean disaster was such that the continent was broken up into 5 islands. The only dated event in the life readings which may be associated with the first Atlantean destruction was the summit meeting of the countries of the world held in 50,722 BC. This meeting was brought about by the invasion of Atlantis by the giant members of the animal kingdom. The decisions of the countries which attended this summit meeting are not clear. Edgar Cayce said the people of Atlantis had constructed giant laser-like crystals for power plants, and that these were responsible for the second destruction of the land. Just prior to the second destruction of Atlantis around 28,000 BC, the Atlanteans had become once again more decadent and corrupt. The Law of One and the sons of Belial engaged in lengthy disputes. One of these disputes was over the use of the group which Cayce termed things. Should they be used as beasts of burden, workers in clay, in mills? Some Atlanteans appear to have aided them in their development, others preferred to exploit them. As before the first destruction, spiritual laws were being applied to material gain, and although the Atlantean people appear to have had repeated warnings of the impending disaster, the majority seemed to have totally ignored them and continued to misuse their knowledge and power. The second destruction resulted in a considerable loss of land and in climatic changes. After the second destruction, the Atlanteans were forced to make many adjustments and alterations to the new conditions which they faced. Their scientific achievements were still considerable, although they do not appear to now be as advanced as the 2 previous eras. The previous disasters had left Atlantis as a group of islands, the chief ones being called Poseidia, Arion, and Og. Cayce blamed the final destruction of Atlantis and the disintegration of their culture on greed and lust. But before the legendary land disappeared under the waves, Cayce revealed that there was an exodus of many Atlanteans to ancient Egypt. He attributed the biblical great flood of Noah to be a result of the sinking of the last huge remnants of Atlantis. He also revealed that the many Atlanteans that managed to escape in hope to preserve a record of their civilization created 2 separate archives with all their history and accomplishments so that it could be preserved for posterity. One of these archives was revealed to be buried under one of the Sphinx paws. The actual Cayce readings related to Atlantis are too vast to be included in a single video. However, we have compiled as many as we could find and devoted a section on our website for your reference. You can find the link in the description. The story of the Hall of Records begins with Atlantis. Near the end of the days of the Atlanteans, the readings explain, there came the first egress of peoples to the Pyrenees and into what later became the Egyptian dynasties. The readings tell us where they settled. In those periods when the first change had come in the position of the land, there had been an egress of peoples from the Atlantean land, and they built a city near the edge of the Sahara. What these people carried were records of the movement of stars and constellations. One of Cayce's readings was for a person who had a past lifetime in Egypt during the period of the Great Pyramid's construction, and Rata was the priest, circa 10,500 BC. The reading describes 2 lifetimes before that one, in the land of Og, and another one in Egypt earlier when the first pyramid was built there. This proves that there were pyramids in Egypt before the Great Pyramid was built. The readings tell us that this same country had been submerged for nearly 250,000 years since civilization had been in this portion of the country. Cayce explained that the monuments were unearthed and added to from time to time. Many were buried beneath shifting sands. When Ra-Ta and his people arrived in Egypt, they conducted archaeological research. They began to build upon those mounds that were discovered through research. With the storehouses or record house, where the records are still to be uncovered, there is a chamber or passage from the right forepaw to the entrance of the record chamber or record tomb. When describing the Sphinx, Cayce sometimes called it the mystery, as if that was what it was called in ancient Egypt. After many years of study and comparison of text and star charts, it was eventually discovered there was an astronomical correlation between Centaurus and the Sphinx, and that the Sphinx monument was later set as a guard. Cayce indicates that the sealed room may not be entered from the connecting chambers from the Sphinx paw until the time has been fulfilled when the changes must be active in this sphere of man's experience. Edgar Cayce provided many clues to the location of the Hall of Records. The one in the Atlantean land that sank, which will rise and is rising again, another in the place of the records that leadeth from the Sphinx to the Hall of Records in the Egyptian land, and another in the Aryan or Yucatan land where the temple there is overshadowing same. For the entity's tomb then was a part of the Hall of Records, which has not yet been uncovered. It lies between or along that entrance from the Sphinx to the temple or the pyramid, in a pyramid, of course, of its own. Hence, we find the entity was the first to set the records that are yet to be discovered, and for the preservation of data that as yet to be found from the chambers of the way between the Sphinx and the Pyramid of Records. In another reading he said, "In the first of the pyramids built in the Valley of the Shadow, there still may be found unto this day portions of data as was preserved with the ruler, who afterward was worshipped as the representative of God made manifest in earth. These will be found in the northwest corner or chamber of this mound." Finally, Cayce mentioned a time when the records may be found. Yet, as time draws nigh when changes are to come about, there may be the opening of the three places where the records are won to those that are initiates in the knowledge of the one God. As with the Atlantis readings, we will provide a selection of actual Cayce readings related to ancient Egypt on our website, and you can find the link in the description. Many individuals are aware of the fact that Edgar Cayce attributed the source of much of his remarkable information as being the Akashic Records. The Akashic Records, or the Book of Life, can be equated to the universe's supercomputer system. It is this system that acts as the central storehouse of all information for every individual who has ever lived upon the earth. More than just a reservoir of events, the Akashic Records contain every deed, word, feeling, thought, and intent that has ever occurred at any time in the history of the world. Much more than simply a memory storehouse, however, these Akashic Records are interactive in that they have a tremendous influence upon our everyday lives, our relationships, our feelings, and belief systems, and the potential realities we draw toward us. The Akashic Records contain the entire history of every soul since the dawn of creation. These records connect each one of us to one another. They contain the stimulus for every archetypal symbol or mythic story which has ever deeply touched patterns of human behavior and experience. They have been the inspiration for dreams and invention. They draw us toward or repel us from one another. They mold and shape levels of human consciousness. They are a portion of divine mind. They are the unbiased judge and jury that attempt to guide, educate, and transform every individual to become the very best that she or he can be. They embody an ever-changing fluid array of possible futures that are called into potential as we humans interact and learn from the data that has already been accumulated. Information about these Akashic Records can be found in folklore, in myth, and throughout the Old and New Testaments. It is traceable at least as far back as the Semitic peoples and includes the Arabs, the Assyrians, the Phoenicians, the Babylonians, and the Hebrews. Among each of these peoples was the belief that there was in existence some kind of celestial tablets which contained the history of humankind as well as all manner of spiritual information. The first biblical reference is found in Exodus 32:32. After the Israelites had committed a most grievous sin by worshiping the golden calf, it was Moses who pleaded on their behalf, even offering to take full responsibility and to have his own name stricken out of thy book which thou hast written in recompense for their deed. Later in the Old Testament, we learn that there is nothing about an individual that is not known in this same book. In Psalm 139, David makes reference to the fact God has written down everything about him and all the details of his life, even that which is imperfect and those deeds which have yet to be performed. For many individuals, this book of life is simply a symbol of those destined for heaven and has its roots in the custom of recording genealogical records of names or perhaps early census taking. Traditional religion suggests that this book, either in literal or symbolic form, contains the names of all those who are worthy of salvation. In discussing the process for accessing these records, Edgar Cayce described his experience as follows. I see myself as a tiny dot out of my physical body which lies inert before me. I find myself oppressed by darkness, and there is a feeling of terrific loneliness. Suddenly I am conscious of a white beam of light. As this tiny dot, I move upward following the light, knowing that I must follow it or be lost. As I move along this path of light, I gradually become conscious of various levels upon which there is movement. Upon the first levels there are vague, horrible shapes, grotesque forms, such as one sees in nightmares. Passing on, there begin to appear on either side misshapen forms of human beings with some part of the body magnified. Again, there is change, and I become conscious of gray-hooded forms moving downward. Gradually, these become lighter in color. Then the direction changes and these forms move upward, and the color of the robes grows rapidly lighter. Next, there begin to appear on either side vague outlines of houses, walls, trees, etc., but everything is motionless. As I pass on, there is more light and movement in what appear to be normal cities and towns. With the growth of movement, I become conscious of sounds, at first indistinct rumblings, then music, laughter, and singing of birds. There is more and more light, the colors become very beautiful, and there is the sound of wonderful music. The houses are left behind. Ahead there is only a blending of sound and color. Quite suddenly I come upon a hall of records. It is a hall without walls, without ceiling, but I am conscious of seeing an old man who hands me a large book, a record of the individual for whom I seek information.